My name is Margaret Carter, and if you're watching this, I need you to hear me clearly. Life has a way of stripping us bare and testing us when we least expect it. I was 58 when it happened to me. I thought I had lived long enough, survived enough storms, and carried enough wisdom to know how betrayal works. But betrayal, when it comes from those you love, is a wound deeper than any stranger could ever give you. For most of my life, I had been the keeper of our family's heirlooms, pieces of history passed down for generations. We weren't royalty, not even close. But the Carter family had something money couldn't buy: legacy. Antique jewelry from my grandmother's wedding, Svilwara, letters preserved in glass. And the centerpiece, a sapphire brooch said to have been a gift from a president to one of my great-aunts. I grew up with these treasures carefully locked in a cedar chest, my father whispering to me as a child, "These aren't just things, Maggie. They're proof we were here, proof we mattered." And so, when my father died, and then my husband not long after, it fell to me to guard the heirlooms and the meaning stitched into them. My children didn't care much for dusty old things, but to me, they were the thread keeping us stitched together. It was on a Sunday, quiet and slow, when the first crack in the fabric appeared. My younger brother, James, came by for dinner. James was 10 years younger than me, charming, always chasing deals, always broke, but somehow always dressed sharp. He carried with him that salesman smile, the one that never quite reached his eyes. At dinner, between bites of roast chicken, he said it casually, as though he wasn't setting my world on fire. "Margaret, you know those old jewels and letters aren't doing anyone any good sitting in that chest? I know a buyer in New York who will pay top dollar. We could split it. Think of your retirement." I set my fork down slowly. "Those heirlooms aren't for sale, James. They're not trinkets to be bartered. They belong to our history." He laughed, shaking his head. "History doesn't pay bills, Maggie." But I saw the flicker in his eyes. That hunger, the way a starving man looks at a meal. I brushed it off that night, but my heart knew better. Weeks later, things began to disappear. Small at first, a silver locket gone from its velvet pouch, then one of the Civil War letters. At first I thought maybe I had misplaced them. I was getting older, after all. But deep down, I knew. My hands shook when I confronted James. "You've been in my house, haven't you? You've been stealing from me." He didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, all arrogance. "Prove it." I wish I could tell you I called the police that very moment, but family has a way of chaining us down with guilt. Instead, I tightened my guard. I locked the chest with new keys, set up cameras, and told myself it was enough. It wasn't the night of the storm. I'll never forget it. Everything shattered. Lightning cracked across the sky. Rain hammered the roof, and I sat alone, drinking chamomile tea when I heard it. The unmistakable creak of the back door. I froze, heart pounding. Grabbing the flashlight, I crept down the hallway. The beam landed on James, dripping wet, his hands clutching the cedar chest. "James," I shouted. His eyes widened like a child caught stealing cookies. "I need this, Margaret." "You'll be fine. You've always been fine." "I need it." Before I could reach him, he shoved past me, chest in hand, and disappeared into the storm. My knees buckled, my breath shallow. Everything my father had trusted me with gone in an instant. That was the night I collapsed on the living room floor. Chest tightening, the weight of betrayal pressing down until darkness took me. When I woke, it was in a hospital bed, machines beeping. A nurse telling me I'd had a mild heart attack. My daughter Anna stood by my bedside, tears streaking her face. "Mom," she whispered, "what happened?" I wanted to tell her everything, but shame clamped my throat. How could I admit that I had let my own brother destroy our legacy? But secrets have a way of surfacing, and James was only getting started. I couldn't shake the image of James's face as he disappeared into the storm with our heirlooms. His eyes had burned with desperation. But something darker lingered behind it. Entitlement, perhaps? Or greed so thick it blinded him. The hospital stay lasted longer than I'd hoped. The doctor insisted on monitoring my heart, prescribing pills, and warning me about stress. Avoid conflict, he said, as though I had the luxury of sidestepping betrayal. Anna tried to comfort me. "Mom, we'll sort this out. James has always been reckless, but he wouldn't hurt you." Her words were kind, but naive. She hadn't seen what I had. She didn't see him push me aside, didn't hear the coldness in his voice. And she didn't see the guilt etched across my reflection when I remembered my father's words. "Guard the heirlooms. Margaret. They are our soul." When I was discharged, I came home to a house that felt hollow. The cedar chest was gone. The storm had left mud across the back porch, and James had left no trace. But as I walked into my study, my eyes caught something odd. A folded piece of paper lay on the desk. It wasn't James's handwriting, it was typed. "Stay quiet, Margaret. You've lost more than you think." My stomach dropped. It wasn't just about the heirlooms anymore. James wasn't working alone. The police weren't much help. When I reported the theft, the officer glanced at his notepad and sighed. "Ma'am, it's a family dispute." "Do you have proof it was your brother?" "Proof?" I snapped. I saw him with my own eyes. But they wanted evidence. The chest in his possession, the heirlooms cataloged, paperwork proving ownership. The problem was, our heirlooms were passed down informally. My father's word, my mother's care, my guardianship. Nothing notarized, nothing legal. Just history, which in the eyes of the law meant nothing. James knew that. A week later, I got the call from Anna. Her voice was trembling. "Mom, you're not going to believe this. Uncle James just filed a claim in probate court. He says Dad left those heirlooms to him." "What?" My voice cracked. She read from the papers. "He has a will, signed, witnessed. Says the heirlooms were his inheritance." I sat down hard. My husband, Michael, had been gone for 5 years. He was an honest man, and he'd never trusted James. He wouldn't have left him the heirlooms ever. Which meant one thing: forgery. The betrayal was cutting deeper now. Not just theft. Not just greed. Fraud. I hired a lawyer, but James came prepared. His attorney strode into the hearing like a shark, waving documents. Calling me an unstable widow who couldn't handle letting go, I wanted to shout, to claw the lies from his throat. But the judge raised his hand for silence. Then James's lawyer did something brilliant and devastating. He presented photographs. Grainy, black and white, but recognizable. Pictures of the heirlooms in James's possession, the sapphire brooch, the letters, the locket. "These are mine," James said, smooth as silk. "I'm merely safeguarding them until the court recognizes my right." I wanted to scream. He stole them from me. But all I had was my word against his. The court delayed judgment, demanding further proof. But in that pause, I saw something I hadn't before. James was afraid. He smiled at the judge, played the role of the wronged younger brother, but his hands trembled as he gathered the papers. He avoided my eyes. That fear gave me hope. I turned to the only ally I could think of, Anna's old friend David. He was a quiet man in his 60s, a retired detective who lived 2 blocks over. He'd always had a soft spot for me. Ever since I'd baked him pecan pie when Anna was in high school. "Margaret," he said, after listening carefully. "If James forged a will, he left fingerprints. People like him always get sloppy somewhere. I'll help you, but you need to be prepared. This will get ugly." Ugly was an understatement. 2 nights later, I heard glass shatter downstairs. My heart leaped as I grabbed the phone. By the time I reached the kitchen, the back window was broken. A rock lay on the floor with a note taped to it. "Drop the case. Or next time, it won't be glass." I pressed my back to the counter, cold sweat dripping down my neck. James was escalating. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't just James. The next morning, I called David. He examined the note, the rock, the window. "This wasn't just to scare you. This was a message. Someone doesn't want this in court. Your brother might not be the mastermind here." That thought chilled me more than the broken glass. If James wasn't pulling the strings, who was? The first real break came from an unexpected place, Anna. She'd been digging through old files in the attic, desperate to find something that could help. One evening, she came running into the living room, dust in her hair, a folder clutched in her hands. "Mom, look, Dad's journals." Inside, my late husband's careful handwriting spilled across the pages. He had chronicled everything, including conversations with James. One entry froze me. "James pressured me again today about the heirlooms. Said he deserved them. Told him no. He didn't take it well. Proof. Not legal proof, maybe, but emotional truth." Tears welled in my eyes. "Your father knew," I whispered. "He knew James would try something like this." But as I flipped through the pages, something else caught my attention. A name repeated, underlined. Harper. Anna frowned. Who's Harper? I hadn't the faintest idea. David dug deeper, using his old police contacts. A week later, he called me with urgency in his voice. "Margaret, you're not going to like this. Harper is James's business partner. He's been arrested twice for art theft. International smuggling. Your heirlooms aren't just sentimental to them. They're planning to sell them overseas." My blood ran cold. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a conspiracy. The next twist hit like a freight. I came home from the grocery store one afternoon to flashing lights. Police cars lined my driveway. An officer stepped forward, holding a warrant. "Mrs. Carter, we have a report that you've been selling stolen heirlooms." I nearly dropped the bag of apples in my hands. "What?" They pushed past me, searching the house. And there, in my study, they found a velvet pouch. Inside my grandmother's necklace, but it hadn't been there when I left. Someone planted it, James, or Harper. Or both. They were framing me. Sitting in the police station that night, answering questions with trembling hands, I felt the lowest I'd ever been. How quickly the narrative had turned, from victim to suspect. From guardian of my family's history to criminal in the eyes of the law. But even as despair tried to smother me, something sharper cut through. Resolve. They thought I was weak. They thought they could break me. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The police let me go after David vouched for my character, but the damage was done. A report had been filed, a shadow cast over my name. That was exactly what James wanted to paint me, as unstable, maybe even criminal, until no one believed me. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, the house dark except for the small lamp beside me. The velvet pouch still lay on the table. My grandmother's necklace shimmered in the light, but all I saw was deceit. Someone had entered my home, planted it, and then called the police. Anna came in quietly, placing her hand over mine. "Mom, we can't keep living like this. You'll make yourself sick." I looked into her tired eyes. She was barely in her 30s, but carrying the weight of her mother's war. And in that moment, I realized something. If I gave up, I'd be teaching her to give up too. "No," I said firmly. "This ends now. We're going to fight. Not just for the heirlooms, but for our name." David leaned back in his recliner, rubbing his chin as I explained the police raid. His living room was cluttered with old case files, yellowing maps, and dusty coffee mugs. "They're sloppy," he said finally. "Planting evidence is desperate. James and Harper are running scared. That's when people make mistakes. We just need to push them further." "How?" I asked. David smiled faintly, the kind of smile that told me he'd been waiting for this moment. "We set a trap. The plan was simple, but dangerous. We'd leak false information, make James believe I was about to move the heirlooms into a secure vault at the bank. If Harper really was running an underground smuggling ring, he'd push James to act fast. And when they did, we'd be ready." Anna was horrified. "Mom, this is insane. What if they hurt you?" I took her hands. "Sweetheart, I've been hurt already. Betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. But if I don't stop them now, they'll keep stealing. Not just from us, but from others too. I won't let that happen." The bait was set. A week later, word accidentally slipped to James that I had arranged for the bank transfer. Anna played her part, letting it slip to an old family friend who still spoke with James. 2 nights later, it happened. I was in the living room pretending to sort old letters when the back door creaked open. Shadows slipped inside, 2 of them. James and Harper. My breath hitched, but I stayed perfectly still. James whispered harshly, She keeps the vault key in the study. Hurry. My hands trembled, but I remembered David's words. Hold steady. Fear makes people reckless. I let them get deep into the house before flicking on the light. Looking for something? My voice was steady, steadier than I felt. James froze, his face pale, but Harper sneered. You should have dropped the case, old lady. Old lady. The words stung, but I stood taller. Funny, that's what they said about my grandmother when she caught a thief in her store. You know what she did? She locked the door and called the sheriff. Right on cue, David stepped out from the hallway, his phone in hand. Sheriff's already on his way. Harper lunged, but David was quicker. In seconds, he had him pinned to the floor. James tried to bolt, but I stepped into his path. For the first time, he looked at me not as his sister, but as an obstacle he couldn't move. You betrayed me, James, I whispered. But worse. You betrayed our father's memory. The sirens wailed outside, but the story didn't end there, at the police station. James broke down. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Harper promised me money. I just wanted my share. I didn't know about the smuggling. His tears might have been real, but I didn't care. He'd made his choices. Harper, on the other hand, was stone cold. He refused to speak, his eyes full of venom. The detectives knew his type. Career criminal, slippery as oil. They warned me it might take months, even years, to tie him to the larger smuggling ring. In the meantime, the heirlooms were recovered from a storage unit Harper had rented under a false name. When the officer opened the trunk and I saw my mother's locket, I nearly collapsed. I clutched it to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Welcome home, I whispered. I thought the battle was over. But then came the twist I never saw coming. A week after the arrests, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words. This isn't over. Watch, Anna. My blood turned to ice. Someone else was out there. Someone even more dangerous. And they were targeting my daughter. That night, I sat awake in bed, the locket in one hand, the letter in the other. I thought about everything I'd endured. Betrayal, humiliation, false accusations, fear. I thought about how close I'd come to giving up. But I also thought about what I'd gained. Resilience, courage, wisdom. And I knew this wasn't just about heirlooms anymore. It was about legacy. About proving that at 55, at 60, at 70, women like me were not done. We had fight left in us. I looked at Anna, asleep on the couch, and I made a vow. Whoever threatens us next will regret it. They will learn that you don't break a Carter woman. Not now. Not ever. And with that, the next chapter of my life began, not as a victim, but as a warrior. The letter haunted me. This isn't over. Watch, Anna. Every time I looked at my daughter, fear clenched my chest. It wasn't just about stolen heirlooms anymore. It was about protecting her life. I had already lost my trust in James, but losing Anna. That thought could kill me faster than any poison. I kept the letter locked in a drawer and didn't tell her right away. I didn't want to burden her with my paranoia, but mothers can't hide things from their children for long. Mom, Anna said one morning as she poured coffee, you've been jumpy since the arrests? What's wrong? I hesitated, staring into the black swirl of my coffee. Then I slid the letter across the table. Her face drained of color as she read it. Watch me. What does that mean? Are they threatening me? I squeezed her hand. It means Harper wasn't acting alone. And whoever he worked for isn't finished with us. David came by later that afternoon. He read the letter with a grim expression. Professional, he muttered. No fingerprints, no handwriting tells. Whoever sent this knows what they're doing. Anna was panicking. So what do we do? Leave town. Change our names? I shook my head. No, running only tells them we're scared. If they want to play games, we'll play smarter. David nodded. Margaret's right. The trick with predators is this. The moment you look weak, they close in. But if you stand tall, sometimes they show themselves. The investigation into Harper revealed something shocking. He wasn't just smuggling heirlooms, he was part of an organized network dealing in stolen antiques across state lines. The mastermind, a name whispered in underground markets, the curator. I felt chills when the detective said it. The curator had a reputation for targeting wealthy families, worming into their trust through relatives or employees, then siphoning off treasures. And according to one lead, the curator had ties. To James, I sat frozen. My brother had already betrayed me, yes. But was he truly just Harper's puppet? Or had he been dealing with the curator all along? When I confronted him in jail, James looked older, smaller. Like betrayal had eaten him alive. I swear, Margaret, I didn't know about the curator, he said, clutching the bars. Harper promised me easy money. I thought it was just a quick sale. I didn't know. Didn't know they'd try to destroy me. My voice cracked. Didn't know they'd threaten Anna? His eyes widened. Threaten Anna? No. No, I never. He stopped. Looked away, and I saw it. Guilt. James, I whispered. What did you do? He didn't answer. But silence was an answer of its own. That night, I dreamed of my mother. She was standing in her little antique shop, polishing a silver teapot. She looked at me with soft, sad eyes. Margaret, she said, trust is fragile, but wisdom is armor. Use what you've learned. When I woke, the fear was gone. I knew what had to be done. The next weeks were a storm. David and I started tracing Harper's records, following every false ID, every transaction. We discovered a warehouse outside Chicago that had the curator's fingerprints all over it. But I didn't tell Anna everything. I needed her focused on her life, not drowning in my battle. Still, she noticed my late nights and whispered calls. Mom, she said one evening, feel like you're hiding things from me? I smiled sadly. I am, not because I don't trust you, honey, but because I want you safe. You've already carried so much of my burden. She hugged me tightly. Then let me help. Don't shut me out. And for the first time, I let her in. Together. We drove to that warehouse with David. I'll never forget the chill of the wind as we stood outside the rusting building. Inside, it was like stepping into a twisted museum. Paintings, jewelry, artifacts from families across generations, all cataloged with precision. The stolen lives of others collected like trophies. This is it, David whispered. But then a voice cut through the silence. Well, the Carter women. I was wondering when you'd find me. From the shadows stepped a woman in her 40s. Elegant and composed, her dark hair tied neatly, her eyes sharp as glass. I'm Rebecca, she said softly. But you may know me by another name. The curator, Anna, gasped. I stood frozen. A woman. I had expected a man, some hardened smuggler. Not this poised, calculating stranger. Rebecca smiled. You've caused me quite a bit of trouble, Margaret. James was supposed to be my inside man, but he grew sloppy, emotionally. You, on the other hand, are fascinating. Stronger than you look. Smarter than anyone gave you credit for. My pulse thundered. You threatened my daughter. Her smile widened. Of course. What better way to break a mother? But you didn't break, did you? That makes you dangerous. David pulled out his phone to signal the police, but Rebecca was faster. A gun appeared in her hand, glinting in the low light. Don't, she warned. For a moment, thought it was the end. But then Anna stepped forward, her voice trembling but steady. You think my mom is weak? She taught me everything I know. She survived betrayal, loss, and lies. You'll never win against her. Rebecca tilted her head, amused. Such spirit. And then sirens. David had already sent the alert earlier, knowing we'd need backup. Within minutes, police swarmed the warehouse. Rebecca's empire crumbled before her eyes. As they cuffed her, she turned to me. You won today, Margaret. But remember, women like us, we don't vanish. Someone will always take my place. I stared back. Then I'll be ready. The heirlooms were returned. The Carter's name restored. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Anna and I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset. "Mom," she said softly, "I don't know how you did it." Most women would have given up. I smiled, brushing her hair back like I did when she was little. Because giving up isn't in our blood. We come from women who fought for every inch of respect. Betrayal can cut us, but wisdom makes us stronger. And then I looked straight into the camera of my phone. Recording my story for the channel, I'd started to share my truth. To every woman out there, if you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. And remember, the lessons life gives us, the scars, the betrayals, they aren't the end. They're the armor that carries us into victory. The video ended. But my story didn't, because I had just begun writing the next chapter of my legacy. I thought the day they arrested the curator would be the day I finally breathed freely again. And in some ways it was. Watching her wrists cuffed, her carefully constructed mask cracking under the fluorescent lights of that courthouse, gave me a satisfaction words can hardly capture. For months, maybe years, she'd haunted my life. Creeping into shadows I didn't even know were there, trying to strip me of my legacy piece by piece. And yet, as the police car pulled away, red and blue lights flashing against the damp evening sky, I felt an emptiness seep into me. Like when a storm that's raged for days finally clears, and you don't know what to do with the ice silence it leaves behind. For a while, I retreated into myself. The house was quieter than it had ever been. My children visited sometimes, Anna especially, who always came with flowers and her hopeful smile, but the space still echoed with absence. The heirlooms were back in my possession, restored by the authorities, cleaned and cataloged. But their presence didn't soothe me the way I thought it would. They were beautiful, yes, but they reminded me of all the battles I'd had to fight just to keep what should have never been stolen. One afternoon, while I was sitting at my dining table with a cup of cooling tea, Anna looked across at me and said, "Mom, you can't just stop living now that you've won. You've got more in you than just surviving. You've got to use what you've learned." I wanted to laugh at her because what did I have to give anymore? But her eyes were steady, full of a belief I couldn't dismiss. And maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't meant to fade into silence. The turning point came when a local community center invited me to speak. They'd heard whispers of my story, how an older woman had outsmarted a con artist, how I'd stood my ground against betrayal and greed. I almost said no. Public speaking wasn't something I craved at this stage in my life. But then I remembered all the nights I had sat alone, wondering if anyone would ever believe me, if anyone would ever listen. So I said yes. That night, standing in front of 40 or 50 women in folding chairs, I felt more alive than I had in years. I told them about the heirlooms, about Rebecca's betrayal, about the curator's manipulation, about how close I had come to losing everything. But I also told them about resilience, about how the lessons we gather over decades through work, through marriage, through laws or tools we can use when the world tries to break us. When I finished, the applause wasn't polite. It was raw, real, and followed by a flood of women pressing forward, some with tears in their eyes. One woman, about my age, squeezed my hands and whispered, "I thought I was too old to start again. But hearing you, maybe I'm not." That moment lit something in me. A spark I hadn't felt since I first built a life with my late husband, since the first time I held one of my children. That night, I decided I wouldn't just tell my story, I would build something new out of it. With Anna's help and David's steady support, I began drafting plans for a foundation. We'd call it the Phoenix Project, a place where women, like me, over 50 women who had been cast aside, betrayed or underestimated, could come together, share skills, build businesses, protect their legacies. Not a charity, but a collective of power. A place to rise again from ashes. But starting something new always brings out the skeptics. Some in town scoffed. Old business associates whispered behind my back that I was chasing a dream too big for my age. Even in our early meetings, some women folded their arms, doubtful, asking, "What if no one funds us? What if no one takes us seriously?" I looked them in the eye and said, "I've already been left for dead once. If I can survive that, I can survive a few people doubting me. And so can you." Slowly, the Phoenix Project grew. We found a small building, shabby but full of potential. With sunlight streaming through tall windows and a cracked wooden floor that seemed to sigh with history. We painted the walls ourselves, our laughter echoing as we brushed over decades of dust. Anna suggested murals bright, defiant phoenixes rising on every wall. But as momentum built, shadows crept back in. One night I found the front door ajar. Inside, someone had scattered papers, broken a chair, scrawled one word across the whiteboard. Stop. Anna wanted to call the police immediately, but I hesitated. I knew this wasn't random vandalism. This was targeted. And in my gut, I felt Rebecca's ghost still lurking. Maybe it wasn't her, locked away as she was, but she had allies. People who had benefited from her schemes, who didn't want women like us standing tall, instead of panicking. I decided to use what the years had taught me: patience, observation, and the art of the trap. We installed hidden cameras, reinforced the locks, and laid out a false trail folders marked investor list left casually on the desk. Filled with nothing but blank pages. It didn't take long. Within a week, the intruders returned. This time, the cameras caught them rifling through the false folders. Their faces were clear, their movements hurried. When the police reviewed the footage, it confirmed what I'd suspected. A pair of men with connections to Rebecca's old network, trying to sabotage us. Watching them hauled away gave me a deep satisfaction. Not the fiery triumph of revenge, but the steady, calm assurance that I could still protect myself and others. Word spread fast. The attempted sabotage became fuel for our cause. Women started reaching out from beyond our town, from other cities, even other states. They wanted to join us, learn from us, invest in us. Before long, we weren't just a small collective, we were a movement. Then came the most unexpected moment of all. My son, the one who had grown distant during the hardest years, walked into one of our meetings. His marriage had crumbled, his finances were a mess, and he looked older than his years. When he saw me at the head of the table, speaking with conviction to a room full of women who hung on my every word, his face crumpled. "Mom," he said afterward, voice shaking, "I didn't know. I didn't realize what you were capable of." I held his hand, torn between the ache of past wounds and the warmth of maternal love. "It's never too late to learn," I told him, as I sit here now, years later. I can say with certainty, the heirlooms mattered. Yes, they were history, family, memory. But what mattered more was proving that survival isn't enough. You have to transform. You have to rise. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because your story matters too. And maybe, just maybe, it's time for you to rise again.